In this video, I'd like to go over the Approximate Pi lab and show you how to code it. This lab deals with writing methods. All of the methods that we're writing are static methods, and they'll go in a class called Approximate Pi. So what I've done is I've set up a class over here. Since this is the second time of writing it, mine's called Approximate Pi 2. And I have a main. This is where I'm going to test it. You can see that I've got testing set up for the very first function. But this method has not been written yet. So what I did just to speed up the process is I added all of the method headers. And if I were to leave them uncommented, basically it doesn't compile because I haven't had a return statement yet, and this method is promising a return of a Boolean. So I'll start with question number 2. In question 2, it says complete the method. Public static Boolean is positive, and it takes in an integer a that returns true if parameter a is positive. So this can be written very easily by just testing if a is greater than 0. That's the test for positive. If that's the case, I'm going to return true. Else, I'm going to return false. And I've set that up to be tested right here in main. So this is a good idea to write your tests this way. You can simply just call the method itself in println, but I like to add a label onto it so I know what what the result is that I'm expecting to get. So for the first one, I'm calling is positive and passing in a -5. So we'll run this. So -5 should return false because it's not positive, and 5 returns true because it is positive. Let's look at the next one. For number 3, we're to complete this method. Public static Boolean is odd, pass in integer a. Return true if the value of the parameter a is odd. So right here, I'm going to move this down here, and we'll solve for this problem right here. So I have to determine if a is odd. So I can easily do that with an if statement. If a mod by 2, if the result of that is 0, then I would want to return false. Actually, let me do an actual test for an odd, which means it's just not even. So if you take a and you mod by 2 and it's not equal to 0, you know it's an odd number. So if that's the case, we're going to return true because it is an odd number. Of course, we can't leave it like that. We also have to have, what if it is an even number? We would need to return false. And we can test that up here. All right, so I'll get a print line is odd. I'm going to pass in a 7, and we'll see what that equals. And I'm just going to copy this. Copy, that way I'm guaranteed that it will be the same. And I will test it for x, which is an even number. And we will print it. So 7 is odd, true. 6 is not odd, false. So while it's possible to write a whole if-else statement based on a conditional Boolean, it's really better to rewrite this a little bit more simply. In this method here, I'm using even curly brackets for the if and the else. You can see these curly brackets, so using a block. I don't really need to do that. You can see on line 27 to 30 here, because the if statements only have one statement in the body, I don't have to put the curly brackets. However, there's even a better way to write this, which is a little bit cleaner. If this really is the test, this what I've got highlighted in blue is a Boolean expression. The Boolean expression is either true or it's not true. So I really can I'm just going to copy this to my pasteboard, and I'm going to delete this, and I can just return the results of this Boolean expression. And this is a much cleaner way to write it. It is not generally the first choice of a beginning student. Beginning student typically wants to write an if-else statement, and that's perfectly acceptable to do that. You just may choose to write it as a single, returning the evaluation of a Boolean expression. All right, let's just test to make sure that that comes back correct. 7 is odd, 6 is not odd. All right, let's look at number 4. Number 4, public static int get max, int A and int B. This returns the larger of the two. It says returns the value if they're the same. And yeah, if A and B is the same, it would really matter which one you returned, correct? Okay, so for number 4, again, I can write this as if A is greater than B, we can just return A. Else, we can return B. So this is fine to write it this way, and we will test it like this. So out.println. Max, we'll put in 4 and 9, and we'll see what that equals. And I'm going to put it in again with the same values, just in reverse order. So we'll put the 9 first for a second, just to make sure that our logic is working. In either case, doesn't matter what the order is, it should return the 9. So we'll look down here at our method. There you go. Now it's possible that you could use the integer. You could return the integer. It's not integer. I mean, you can use the integer class, but we're used to using the math class. The max of A or B, so you could make the math class do your work for you. You'll get the same result. Okay. I'm just going to put it back to the original because I think most students would write it this way. All right, 5 is a riddle, and I don't know the answer to the riddle. Number 6, public static int roll dice. So roll dice. So usually we're thinking of a 6-sided die here. Let me just read the instructions again. When we roll dice, we're going to return a random number between 1 and 6. Now that's 1 and 6 inclusive because the standard die has 6 sides. So this is where we need a random number. You can generate a random number using math.random method, but since we've been using the random class, we will use that one instead. This has to be imported, so I'll put the import up at the top. Okay, so random number generator equals new random. And then I'm going to write a return statement. So I'm going to start it with return, and then I'm going to create a formula for generating a random number between 1 to 6. So rng.nextInt, and I want to pass in a 6 because I want 6 possible outcomes, and I'm going to add a 1. Remember that if you call nextInt and you pass in a 6, you're going to get the values 0 through 5, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But we would like to shift them. So we call 6 the scaling factor and the added 1 a shifting value. So this should give us a number in that range. A great way to test this is honestly just to put it in a loop. So I'm going to write a quick loop here. I'm going to run it 10 times, and I'll just say roll die. And we'll let that in for us. And I'll go back down to the function so you can see it. So we don't have any zeros in there. We want to make sure there's no zeros, because that means we shifted it correctly. And this time we did get a 6. So if I run this a few times, we should see that all the values fall in the range of 1 to 6 inclusive. Okay, let's switch over and do number 7. Number 7 says complete the method public static int roll dice int number of faces. So this returns a random number between 1 and number of faces representing the roll of a die with a non-standard number of faces. So I have a bunch of dice that are 4-sided and 10-sided and 12-sided and 20-sided dice. So it is possible to have a die that has a different number of sides than 6. Of course, we're going to assume that all the faces have an equal chance of being landed on. And I'm going to steal my code up here, because really the only thing that we're changing is this bound. Instead of having a 6-sided die, we're going to run it with we're going to pass in a number. So what I'm going to do to test this is I'm going to use the loop that I have right here. I'll just copy. Let's see. Let me think about how I would like to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to take out the loop, and I'm just going to make 3 calls to the roll dice. We'll actually put the roll dice here. We'll call this one 3 times just to have a little variety. And then we will call one that passes in a 10. So 10-sided die. And we'll call this one 3 times as well. So if I continue to run this code, I should see values that are right here in the range of 1 to 10, but never outside of that range. Let's see if we can run it a few times and get a 10 at least once. There's a 10. Okay, it looks like that's a good function. Let's solve for number 8. Number 8 says we're going to complete the method public static string capitalized first, and then it takes in a string name. This returns the supplied string with the first letter capitalized. You can assume that the name parameter will be already in lowercase. Okay. All right, so I have to break my name into basically 2 parts, the first letter and then everything after the first letter. So I can build this string. I'll say first for first letter, and then I'm going to take the name and call substring and get the first letter. So that's substring 0, 1. I can chain this together to get an uppercase letter back. So I'll call 2 uppercase. So I've chained together the name. I've gotten called substring, which gives me the string of the first character. And then on that first character string, I'm calling 2 uppercase. So remaining, I'll call string remaining, and this will give me the rest of it. I'll call substring, pass in 1, and that'll give, whoops, no comma. And that will give me the remaining word. And then I will simply return The first letter, which is now capitalized, concatenated with the remaining letters. And we'll pass in the word Alice. I put those backslashes so that the quotes would appear in my label. And I'll show you them together. So our output is Alice. The A is capitalized. We didn't drop any letters. So it is clean. All right, let's look at number 9. Number 9 says complete the method public static double circle area double radius. This one returns the area of the circle with the supplied radius. So we'll close this. So the formula is pi r squared. So I can just return the result of the formula, and that is going to be pi r squared. We get math.pi. Multiply that by the radius squared. And for convenience, I'll just write out radius twice. Radius times radius. So we will test this. This is called circle area. And I'll pass in a radius of size 2. And we should get, so that's size 12. That should be, yeah, if pi is 3 and 2 squared is 4, 12.5 sounds about right. Let's look at the next one. Number 10. Complete the method public static Boolean is multiple. We pass in A and B. So we have to determine if A is a multiple, well, if B is a multiple of A. Hold on, let me read this again. Returns true if B is a multiple of A. Okay, very nice. So we can determine if something's a multiple just by using the mod operator. So if we were to take A and mod by B and the result is 0, then we know that B is a multiple of A. So let's test this. Let me just get the name of it right, is multiple. So we would like to take 12 and take 3 and see if 3 goes into 12. And I'm going to try this again with one that won't be a multiple. So 7 will not be a multiple of 12. And we'll run this. Okay, so 3 goes into 12, but oops, I didn't update this part. That was supposed to be 7. It's important to get your labels correct because sometimes you think your function is broken and really it's just your label. Okay, so 3 goes into 12, but 7 does not go into 12. All right, 11 is a riddle, so we'll go on to 12. We want to complete the method public static string convert time. We're going to take in a double for time, and a Boolean for is minutes. So this converts seconds to minutes or vice versa. So if is minutes is true, we know that the time is in minutes when we have to convert to seconds. If this parameter is false, we know that time is in seconds and we have to convert to minutes. And here's some examples here if you're uncertain of the expectation. Okay, so I'm going to handle if is minutes. So if we're converting from minutes to seconds, then the new time would be, and remember we're returning a string. So while I do have to count here, I'll do this first. I will calculate the amount of seconds that there are. And then I will concatenate it into a string to return the string. So the number of seconds, if we're given minutes, would be the number of minutes or the time times 60, because there's 60 seconds in a minute. And then we could return, let's look at the phrasing of it. So many minutes is so many seconds. Okay. So time minutes is seconds. Okay. So if that is not the case, then correct that. If it's not minutes and we don't hit the return statement, then we will calculate it again as how many minutes we're given, because we know that the time that we're given is in seconds. So if we take the time, what's given in seconds, and we divide by 60 this time, that'll give us the number of minutes. And so we would want to return that the time, which is seconds, is minutes, number of minutes. Okay, let me just make sure that I got the phrasing right. So 3 minutes is 180 seconds, 3 minutes is 180 seconds, and the reverse would be seconds is so many minutes. So seconds is so many minutes. Okay, we'll finish with a semicolon. So it's called convert time, takes in time, and takes in a Boolean. We'll do the conversion on 3 minutes, and then we'll do the conversion on 180 seconds. So pass in 180 and false for our value being in the number of minutes. Instead, it would be in the number of seconds. Copy paste that so it's consistent. So we should see that 3 minutes is 180 seconds. 180 seconds is 3 minutes. So the conversion is correct. All right, next is 13. Okay, complete the method public static void print diagonal, and it takes in a string. And this string, or in this method, prints this string parameter in the following fashion. Shown below, when string S is passed as hello, we see hello is going diagonal. Okay. And notice this returns void, so the way we test it has to be a little bit different since our print statements will be in this function and not in main. So we have to loop through our string. So our string will run length number of times. And we need to put so many spaces before we print each letter. If I were just to print a letter, it would look something like this, where I would use substring, and I would print the letter at I. So that would be I, comma, I plus 1. That would print the single character at I. But I need to precede it by a number of spaces, and the number of spaces has to do with the number of spaces that would precede it would be I spaces, I number of spaces. So I really do need just another loop in here. And this loop will run I number of times. So this is a loop with a different variable. This is variable j. J will start at 0, but for each iteration, it'll only go I number of times. So the first time through the loop, I will equal 0 and this loop won't run at all. Then when the outer loop is 1, I equals 1, the inner loop will run 1 time. So in here, I need to print, not print line, but print the number of spaces equivalent to I. There is no reason to have a return statement because I'm not returning anything. Because this is a void method, the return statement is optional, and there's no reason to put it in at the bottom since I'm not trying to leave the method early. So let's look at how we did. We don't need a print statement for this actually. We just need to call print diagonal. If you want a label for this, you can print one. I'll go ahead and I'll just write a quick seemingly quick label right here. So this is print diagonal. Okay. And we have our hello printing diagonally. Let me just show you the code one more time. Again, we need an outer loop that goes through each letter of S, and then an inner loop to print the correct number of spaces. The correct number of spaces is I number of spaces. And then this one finishes off each line by printing the actual letter at I.